The story begins when once upon a time, there lived a man who devoted himself only for the sword. Someone then launched an attack on that man, and that man raised his sword. With the power that he channeled into that sword, it made his opponent's sword shatter. He loved his sword so much and lived for that sword. That man then held an honorable title, which was only given to those who had mastered various types of sword arts and was called Sword Saint. Time passed, and that Sword Saint was eventually reborn. That's how the story goes that he could set foot in this era. That boy confidently entered the first academy in the capital. He who was reborn while still retaining his old memories was now given the name Lius. He didn't know why he was reincarnated, but finally he came to this academy to learn about sword arts again, because this academy turned out to be big too. He even had difficulty finding the location of his exam and wondered which direction he should go. He saw that there were many people there. Lius then approached one of the people there and asked if he wanted to take the sword exam. That person wondered about sword arts. That person then shouted that there was a fool there who wanted to enter the sword arts department. This made Lius wonder and ask what was strange about it. That person said that sword arts were outdated. Now was the era of magic ruling. It could even be said that this academy existed for magic users. Hearing the mention of magic, Lius knew that in his previous life, such technology had just been discovered. Lius then said that if magic could develop that far, then sword arts, which used to be the mainstay in war, must have developed much further. Some people who heard Lius's words thought that Lius was a country bumpkin who had never known magic and didn't understand how useless sword arts were. That person then wanted to do something and said that he would show how great magic was. Besides, if Lius entered this academy, he would only be humiliated later. That person then launched his magic attack and asked if it was okay if he made Lius's body unable to take the exam. Lius, who saw that magic attack, launched toward him. He then avoided that magic attack so easily, and he looked so impressed by that magic attack. Lius then felt enthusiastic and his hopes for sword arts became even higher. This made that person feel annoyed, and he then launched another magic attack while saying that magic was far greater. Lius, who saw that, he then charged forward and grabbed one of that person's hands, which ended with that person falling due to Lius's action. This made that person wonder what had just happened. Lius then apologized if his attitude just now made that person offended, and said that he was just really surprised to witness his magic. Because Lius was in a hurry, he then left that place. Some people wondered what had just happened, and several people also said they didn't see anything. Lius, who wondered where the location of the sword arts department was. He who was running thought that he had wasted a lot of time and the size of this academy was too vast. He stated that like this, he could be late to register. Someone then tried to call Lius, and that person was a girl. She asked, "What are you doing?" "Because you've been pacing around here all this time." That girl asked if perhaps you're lost. Lius then answered yes, and that girl asked again if you're looking for the sword arts department, which was answered correctly by Lius. Lius then asked back if you're also looking for the sword arts department, which was answered yes by that girl. Hearing that, Lius then concluded one thing. By pointing at that girl, he said that you're also lost like me. This made that girl wonder looking at him. She didn't know why Lius misunderstood, but she had already finished taking the exam. She spoke to Lius only because she felt Lius might need help, and asked, "So can you directly say whether you need me or not?" Lius, who heard those words, was shocked. He then replied, of course, and told that he really wanted to join the sword arts department. After hearing Lius's answer, she didn't know what made Lius so motivated, but since she herself offered, she would escort him. Lius then said thank you and said that they hadn't been introduced yet. Lius then introduced his name, and he came from a village in the border region. And that girl also introduced herself. Her name was Sarah Garnet. Lius then greeted Sarah, and Sarah, who saw Lius's reaction, felt puzzled. She said that Lius really didn't know anything. Huh? Lius asked about what? Which Sarah answered no, nothing. Lius then asked Sarah for her guidance, and Sarah then approached Lius. She said that Lius was going to take the exam, so pay attention to his appearance, and wondered what kind of way to put on a tie this was. Lius said that he had never worn this before. Since morning, he had been struggling to try to tie it, but it seemed unsuccessful. Sarah said that she would help tie it, watch, and learn. After finishing tying that tie, Lius felt impressed about his appearance. Seira said that starting tomorrow, Lius had to be able to tie it himself. Lius said that Seira was really amazing, and Seira said that everyone could do it if they learned, and rather than that, she told him that they didn't have much time left. They then arrived at the location of the Sword Arts Department exam. Lius, who saw it, then asked if Seira was sure the Sword Arts exam location was here, which was answered yes by Seira, and indeed, this was the place for the Sword Arts Department exam. Lius asked if the exam was very different from the Magic Arts Department, right? Seira then told Lius to hurry there because his turn would come soon, and Lius wanted to ask something. He asked if the Sword Arts Department wasn't very popular, and Seira asked back why Lius asked that now. Seira then told Lius that people who entered the Sword Arts Department at this academy were only people who entered carelessly because they were after diplomas. Weird people who just wanted to know. Because they were willing to enter here just to become the laughingstock of Magic Arts Department students. In a world where magic had developed like now, the position of swordsman was below wizards. That was already common knowledge. Hearing that, Liu said that this academy was controlled by wizards. That sounded quite interesting. Seira asked what Lius just said. Lius then thanked Seira for escorting him, and he wanted to take the exam first, which was answered yes by Seira. Hearing over there that participant number 15 would take the exam. Lius, who looked toward that exam participant looked like he was preparing, and he then launched an attack on that armor. But his attack was deflected back by that armor. Lius, who saw it, thought that swordsmen had reasons too to pack up. His swordsmanship basics were terrible, setting aside the lack of experience. If it's only this much. Someone then called Lius. That person asked, "Are you also an exam participant?" Lius answered yes, and please guide me. That person said not to waste time with his sword games. Lius then took his sword and thought that their treatment was indeed very bad. He then wanted to ask one thing to that person. If he damaged this armor, would he later be asked to pay compensation? That person laughed because it was so funny with his question, told that the armor was made from a mixture of iron and magic ore, and was very famous for its hardness level. Even high-level wizards would have difficulty damaging it. That person said if Lius could indeed damage it, go ahead. Lius felt relieved after hearing that, and he then raised his sword while emitting an aura. This made that person sense something. He wanted to try to stop Lius, but it was too late because his sword was about to slash that armor, and it was seen that Lius slashed that armor so powerfully, to the point of creating a big explosion at that exam location, and ended with that armor split into two parts as well as the ground beneath it. Everyone who saw that incident was shocked. So was Seira when witnessing that. It made her silent, not saying anything. That person asked what the heck was this, even making a hole in the ground. Lius, with his happy facial expression, said that the cut was neater than he expected. Now, after Lius passed the exam a few days ago, it was seen that Lius was trying to put on his tie correctly, and after finishing with his appearance, Lius was officially accepted at the Royal Academy, and today would be his first day attending class. He departed. With full confidence, his life at the academy finally began. Someone then called Lius, who turned out to be Seira, and Lius said hi to her. He said that he hadn't seen Seira since the entrance exam. Seira asked, "What's wrong?" Seira, who looked toward Lius and thought about what kind of sword technique that guy used at that time. Lius then understood and asked if Seira was worried about his tie. Because of Seira, this time he was really ready, but Seira became puzzled. Lius thanked for everything that Seira had done since that exam, and Seira was very helpful. This made Seira feel flustered and said that Lius misunderstood. That wasn't what she meant. She told Lius that she wouldn't talk to Lius anymore, which made Lius shocked when he heard it. Lius then chased Seira and said that he didn't know where his class was, and Seira said not to follow. After they arrived in class and the lesson was ongoing, it was seen that Lius was sleeping there. Seira asked what Lius was doing and said that Lius had to pay attention to the lesson. Lius asked if that was normal, which was answered, of course, by Seira. That was the purpose of the academy. But Lius said that this lesson didn't make his sword ability improve. The teacher then shouted to be quiet, and Seira apologized. The teacher turned his face away and said that this sword arts department was really annoying. Seira, who looked worried after hearing that, and she felt annoyed about something. After the lesson ended, Lius then called Seira. He apologized because it was all his fault. But earlier Seira said she didn't want to talk anymore. Seira said that she only talked because Lius's lazy attitude was very disturbing, and she had to go to the training facility, which made Lius ask about the training facility. Seira said that they were free to use the academy's training facility after class lessons ended. The equipment at this academy was complete. That's why many students enrolled here. This made Lius really want to see it directly and go with Seira. After they arrived at the training facility, they saw that this training facility was already being used by the magic arts department. Lius asked if, according to Seira, it was difficult to find another facility that hadn't been used by them. Seira said maybe there was still one they could use. Lius then invited Seira to go there now, which was answered correctly by Seira, because if they didn't go soon, the magic arts department might take it. Someone then shouted to get out of there. When Seira turned around to look back, she was shocked when she saw there was a magic attack that would hit her. However, that shock then disappeared. A very big explosion was created in front of Seira. Seira tried to open her eyes, which ended with Seira successfully avoiding that magic attack because she was saved by Lius. Seira asked Lius if he could dodge this far in a matter of seconds. Someone then came to approach them and wanted to apologize because his hand slipped. He asked to please forgive him. But that person then was shocked when he looked toward the two of them, knowing that those were black uniforms. They were both just sword arts department kids, and who cared if they both got hit? That person then left. This made Lius shocked and asked, "Don't you want to apologize?" Seira said never mind, it's useless, as she had already said. That's how sword arts department kids were treated at this academy. And Seira thanked Lius because he had saved her earlier. Lius said not to think about it. Now, just show where the training facility is. Seira said all right, leave it to her, and just don't expect too much. After the two of them arrived at the facility that Seira had told about, Seira said that this wasn't like the previous facility. This one didn't have the latest equipment, and hopefully Lius didn't mind. This made Lius feel happy and asked what Seira meant. This place was perfect for training. Seira asked, "Really? If so, that's good." Lius said although the building was made of wood, it was well made and it looked quite sturdy. The floor was indeed a little damaged, but the damaged parts they could repair themselves, and he really liked this place. Seira wanted to warn Lius not to do things that Lius would regret. Lius became puzzled and asked, weren't they allowed to repair? Seira said that later it could attract the attention of the magic department. After hearing that, Lius said that Seira kept talking about the magic arts department and asked why Seira was so afraid of them. Seira asked back if Lius really didn't know anything about that. Seira told Lass that every time students from the magic arts department found students practicing sword arts at the training facility, those students would be bullied in the most cruel way, and anyone who submitted repair requests for training facilities would not only be rejected. Sword Arts Department students would also be forced to obey orders from Magic Arts Department students. Magic Arts Department students didn't like the striking black attacks from the Sword Arts Department. Lius asked if this uniform made such a big difference, which was answered yes by Seira. The color of Magic Arts Department students' uniforms was aristocratic white. White and black uniforms showed the difference in status. Lius asked again if the Magic Arts Department was indeed very powerful. Someone then came and answered yes, indeed so. At least better than Sword Arts Department students, and that person came with a facial expression full of hostility. Seira, who saw it, was shocked, and Lius said white uniform. Speaking of the devil, that's Magic Arts Department. Lius asked, who are you? That person asked back, do you really not know who I am? Lius said that this was the first time they met. That person felt annoyed and said, damn country bumpkin. That person then called Seira and told her to introduce him. Seira said that person was Ibram Vadaran. He was considered the strongest among first-year Magic Arts Department students. Ibram said exactly right and thanked for the introduction while insulting them. Hearing about someone who was the strongest. This made Lius feel happy about that. Sarah, who saw Lius's face, felt puzzled. She wondered why this guy could put on an expression like that in front of a magic arts department student. Lius asked what this strong one wanted from them. Ibram said that he actually didn't have a special reason to come here. Some seniors asked him to watch first-year sword arts department students, and he happened to see them doing something suspicious. That's why he came here. Lius said that Ibram's sense of smell was sharp too. Sarah said that Ibram was too strong. They had to retreat. Ibram then said that magic arts department students would use this place and asked if Lius didn't mind. Lius said that the magic arts department had very good facilities, so there was no use using broken buildings like this, which was answered correctly by Ibram, and the magic arts department had more training facilities. Ibram then wanted to say the truth. He came here just to bother Lius. Lius said that they didn't do anything to deserve being treated like this. Ibram asked if Lius didn't remember. He then called someone to come here. Ibram asked Lius if he definitely wanted to with this person. This person said that Lius beat him up during the entrance exam. Lius then remembered. Lius asked, so this was revenge. That person attacked first. Ibram then said that made no difference. The fact was, Lius used violence on one of the magic arts department students. He had decided to execute publicly. And Ibram declared that he challenged Lius to a duel. Ibram asked if Lius knew how the duel system worked at this academy. This made Lius wonder about the duel system, and Sarah, who was shocked when she heard that. It was told that every time there was a dispute, a one-on-one fight was conducted fairly, and the winner had the right to make a request. That was a rule that had been passed down from long ago. Sarah told Lius not to do that. Lius didn't need to accept it. Ibram then knew who this girl was. He said that this girl came from the Garnet family, and told that this girl was a perfect candidate to become a slave for magic arts department students. Ibram then had decided. His request was to expel Lius from this place and hand this girl over to the magic arts department. Sarah said impossible. However, Lius said he agreed. Lius said that his request was for Ibram to never come to this place again and stop being arrogant towards sword arts department students, because Ibram's attitude had gone too far. Ibram said all right. The duel would take place tomorrow. Until that time came, try to hold yourself back from being scared. Sarah, who felt panicked, asked what was in Lius's mind. It wasn't too late to cancel it. Did Lius know that in the ranking system created by the strongest students at this academy, no one could rival Ibram among first-year students? Lius asked, really? Which made Sarah say, what did Lius mean, really? Lius said that a guy at Ibram's level wasn't too difficult to defeat. This made Sarah silent when she heard Lius's words with such a calm face. On the day of the duel between Lius and Ibram, Sarah noticed that all the spectators, except herself, were from the magic department. She wondered if this wasn't a problem. The spectators from the magic department shouted at Ibram to beat up Lius and show who's the boss. Lius said that there were many spectators here. Ibram asked Lius if he was afraid of being embarrassed in front of everyone. Lius answered that wasn't the problem. He was just surprised to see that the magic department had so much free time. He continued by saying that if they kept skipping practice even for just one day, their development would be very little. Ibram became annoyed and asked if Lius was lecturing them. Ibram laughed and told Lius to worry about himself. The spectators from the magic department said that Lius was from the lowly sword arts department. Ibram threatened that if after this Lius couldn't hold a sword anymore, then Lius could only blame himself. One of the spectators from the magic department talked about how when Ibram's fire magic hit his last opponent, his right arm became charcoal after being hit by that fire magic. One of the spectators from the magic department said that Lius was lucky if he only lost the ability to hold a sword, and Lius realized his opponent was using fire magic. Sarah thought that Ibram's fire magic ability was among the top 5 in the entire academy, and Ibram wasn't an opponent who could be defeated with just sword skills. Ibram arrogantly considered this as a tragic drama where he was the invincible hero, and told the spectators from the magic department to sit down and enjoy this. A referee asked if both challengers agreed to the duel conditions, which was answered with by Lius, and Ibram answered yes. One of the spectators from the magic department heard that Sarah would be made a servant of the magic department and wondered what would be done to her. That person was very impatient about this. Sarah, who heard it, felt annoyed as well as worried. The referee told the challengers to take their positions. After the referee shouted, "Begin," Ibram immediately launched fire magic while telling Laius not to lose immediately. He said that this was just an opening greeting. The attack exploded, but Laius managed to avoid it. Ibram, who knew that Laius could avoid that mag attack, he asked how long Laius could keep dodging. Laius, who heard it, could only remain silent. He then ran forward, approaching Ibram very quickly. Ibram told him to stop moving and launched a fireball attack. Laius, who knew that the fireball attack was directed from front and back. This made Sarah surprised when she saw it. However, the fireball attack was successfully avoided by Laius. The spectators from the magic department shouted that dodging wouldn't make Laius win. Sarah wondered if Laius was afraid of magic, because a sword shouldn't be able to withstand magic. Sarah herself wondered how Laius could keep staring straight at Ibram, looking at his opponent's eyes and following his opponent's eye movements. Laius thought in his heart that this was an important skill for a swordsman. Following the eye movements of a master swordsman with eyes was almost impossible when they stared at each other. Therefore, to anticipate the sword's path, it was necessary to read the opponent's eye movements. Their eye movements were much faster than any attack and showed the direction of the sword slash. The skill he developed as a master swordsman turned out to be useful for fighting wizards. Ibram became very annoyed because his attacks never hit. He shouted to stop moving the ring and launched a three-headed fire snake magic. When the three-headed fire snake magic attack was about to hit Laius, Sarah worried that Laius wouldn't be able to attack if the snake blocked him, and wondered what Laius would do. Laius didn't think much. He actually made a frontal attack and charged forward at that magic. This made Sarah surprised because Laius was very reckless. Laius thought, so this is what it feels like to fight a wizard. While slashing those fire snakes, Laius smiled and thought this was very interesting. This made Sarah surprised when she saw that movement. So did the spectators from the magic department, and Ibram, who didn't expect this. Laius felt that his blood hadn't boiled like this for a long time. Ibram realized that this spell created a defensive gap at close range. He was also surprised at how Laius could see all of that with just one glance. But not only that, Ibram then directed his palm in front of Laius's face and prepared to launch a counterattack he had prepared. Ibram fired flame cannon from very close range, which created a big explosion there. The spectators from the magic department felt surprised as well as worried when they saw that. It appeared that Laius was thrown back after receiving that magic attack. Ibram said that Laius was stupid, and his fight was over. However, Laius, who came to his senses there, wanted to say something. This made Ibram surprised when he saw it. Laius, who survived the explosion without injury, and said, "Next. Show me the next spell." Ibram was confused why his spell didn't hit Laius at all, and Laius wasn't hurt at all. Laius said because Ibram could create this much fire, it meant he must have stronger spells. Ibram became annoyed about that. He shouted, "Shut up," and attacked again. But Laius easily deflected that attack. Ibram, who looked panicked there as he kept launching his magic, and thought that he would run out of spells if this continued, and wondered why he was having trouble against an ordinary swordsman. Laius asked if Ibram had run out of ideas. He then wanted to say something, with his cold gaze saying that Ibram was very disappointing. Ibram, who was scared, shouted for Laius not to come closer. He then launched a flame cannon attack. It appeared that the sword Laius was using was glowing. His sword looked like it would slash that magic attack. In a flashback, it was revealed that when Ibram used flame cannon, Laius also slashed that magic attack until it split. With that sword slash, Ibram's magic attack was successfully slashed again by Laius. The referee was surprised to see a sword technique that could slash magic. Laius pointed his sword at Ibram's neck. Ibram said that he had never heard of such a thing. The spectators from the magic department and Sarah were surprised to see a sword technique that could slash magic. Ibram asked, "Who are you really?" Sarah realized that Laius won. Someone said that it seemed there was an interesting swordsman who entered this academy. Among the spectators, a blonde girl with a rose ornament, thought that she had a feeling Lius would be very useful. News about the new student from the sword arts department, Lius, who defeated the strongest first-year student from the magic department, Ibram, spread throughout the campus. In the sword arts department building, Sarah heard everyone talking about Lius. She was curious about the sword technique Lius used to slash magic spells, and worried because all attention was now focused on him. Lius was called by a blonde girl who introduced herself as Alicia Soldian, the student council president. Alicia said that she knew who Lius was, and Lius immediately asked what she wanted to discuss. Alicia said Lius was impatient. She invited him to drink tea and relax first. They then sat in chairs facing each other. When Lius looked at the girl who was drinking tea, he felt that this woman had a different aura. Although Alicia looked calm, Lius felt as if there were many swords pointed at him. Alicia then asked if Lius liked tea, which made Lius confused by that question. Alicia praised his face, which looked happy when offered tea. Lius regretted in his heart because he shouldn't have shown curiosity in front of someone this strong. He then apologized and didn't mean anything. Alicia got straight to the point, confirming that Lius had defeated Ibram Vadaran, one of the most talented students in the magic department. Alicia stated that ordinary students would find it difficult to even touch, let alone defeat Ibram, so she considered Lius to be someone special. Because of that, Alicia wanted to ask something from Lius. Alicia asked Lius to participate in the ranking battle that would be held in 2 months. Alicia explained that this tournament was held once a year, where fighters, both wizards and swordsmen, fought each other to measure their abilities. Those who made it to the top 10 would be given honorary status in the Academy's hierarchy system. Lius asked why Alicia wanted him to participate. Alicia answered that she wanted Lius to help improve the quality of the wizards. According to Alicia, the arrogance of the magic department had made their quality decline every year, and now a swordsman had appeared who could destroy the existing ranking system. There was no one else as special as Lius. Lius asked if there were strong wizards participating. Alicia answered, of course. She then told him that she herself was ranked 3rd in the hierarchy. Lius accepted the invitation. Alicia then thanked him, and that was all she wanted to discuss. Lius said that he looked forward to fighting against strong opponents. After Lius left that room, Alicia then smiled and felt happy about this. She said that the school was filled with darkness and asked if Lius would become a light for them. In the capital of the kingdom of Riversia, Lius thanked Seda for helping him. Seda felt worried because Lius always acted as he pleased. When at the academy before they went to the capital, Sarah asked what the student council president wanted from Lius, but before she finished, Lius suddenly asked her, "Do you want to go out with me?" Sarah was very surprised. Lius explained that he needed a friend to go shopping. Sarah then fell silent. She asked about shopping. Lius then said because his sword broke during the duel, he didn't know that swords at this school were apparently easy to break. Lius reminded that he couldn't go to the store alone, and Sarah, who initially refused because she didn't have time. She then remembered something. Sarah finally agreed to accompany him, and Lius then thanked her. Sarah said that she also had a request for Lius. When at the market, Lius said that the capital was indeed amazing. Lius, who was impressed with the friendliness of the capital, he had never been in such a crowded place. He then offered a snack to Sarah, which made Sarah surprised to hear it. Sarah, who initially refused because she didn't want to be in debt, but she finally accepted that food. Sarah talked about the request she wanted to say earlier. She asked how to be able to slash spells. Sarah's request was for Lius to teach her how to slash spells. Lius became confused that spells couldn't be slashed. He then said that it wasn't a problem, and said he would show it in the training room after returning to school. Lius, who thought that the sword arts he knew might be different from the sword arts of this era. They arrived at a weapon shop. Sarah told Lius to go in alone and she would wait outside. Lius asked why not go in together. Sarah said that she had her own reasons. Hearing that, Lius then understood. Inside the shop, the blacksmith showed Lius a fairly good sword. Lius thought about a cheap and durable sword, or one with a sharper tip. The blacksmith suggested Lius choose a sharper sword. However, he said he didn't care too much about sharpness. Laius actually chose a more durable sword. The blacksmith found it strange, and he thought that swordsmen prioritized sharpness above all else. Laius explained that he didn't care too much about sharpness because he could cover its shortcomings with technique, and it was more dangerous if the sword broke in the middle of battle. The blacksmith thanked him for shopping because this was the only weapon shop in the city, so make sure Laius shopped here often. Laius said that he would definitely return. The blacksmith said that sword arts were still popular. Maybe now this shop would be busy, and if only the previous swordsmen were stronger. When Laius wanted to ask what the blacksmith meant by that, Laius was surprised to hear Seira screaming there, and the blacksmith said that it must be a fight, and said that this was quite a rough area. The blacksmith asked Laius to be careful, and Laius thanked him. When Laius came out of the shop, he saw Seira being confronted by a group of students from the magic department. Seira stated not to interfere because this was her business with these bastards. That person wanted to say it again. That person insulted Seira by saying how pathetic it was to be a descendant of the criminal swordmaster. This certainly made Seira angry, and that person then used bind magic. A rope then appeared. The rope tied and paralyzed Seira. Seira then fell, and that person mocked her once again, saying that's what happened when a swordsman fought a wizard, and saying that this girl was quite pretty. That person intended to play around with Seira. Seira, who couldn't do anything, could only resign herself. However, Laius appeared by grabbing that person's wrist to save Seira. Seira, who saw it, was surprised and wanted to say something to Laius, but Laius coldly said that people who couldn't move shouldn't talk too much. Seira then fell silent and felt annoyed. That person recognized Laius as the student who defeated Ibram and saw this as an opportunity to become greater than Ibram by defeating him. A magic attack then appeared in front of Laius and Seira. Laius, who saw that magic attack there, he then told Seira that this was the perfect opportunity to show her how, and told Seira not to look away from all his movements. Laius then drew his sword and enveloped his entire sword with some power. This made Seira surprised when she saw it mine. Very quickly, Laius slashed that magic attack very easily. He told that person to leave here. This made that person scared until he ran away helter-skelter without touching that person physically. Laius commented that the mental strength of magic department students was very weak. Laius then slashed the rope that bound Seira's body. Seira, who was still sitting on the ground, asked what Laius had just done. She saw Laius's sword glowing and asked if that was magic.